Hey everybody, it's Jackie with Jackie's Recent Things. Today I'm going to show you how to make a rag bow using the EzBow Maker. Now what I have is I have my pieces of starched fabric here already. And what I'm going to use is the salvage edges that I cut off to tie my fabric together. So I'm going to set these aside and let's get started. So I'm going to lay my first tie into my EzBow Maker. And I'm just going to pull it out of the way. Now for this project, my sign did not have pink dominance. So I have a yard of pink, and then my red and my black over here, I have half a yard of each of these. So I'm going to use a little bit more of this for my loops. So what I'm going to do to get started, I'm going to take just a little bit of my tail and hang it over this way and set it in there. How you decide how big you want your rag bow is going to be to taste. On an average, when we make bows, they're about 7 inches. My sign in this case is pretty big that I'm going to use, so I want a fairly large bow. So I'm going to make it 7 inches. And I'm going to twist this just like I would regular ribbon so that the good side faces up. This little piece of tail that's left, I'm going to hang that down because that's going to add charm to the rag bow. I'm going to grab another piece of this. Now I started this way with the tail this time. I'm going to start this way, and I'm going to do that to alternate how my leftover tail hangs. So you want your bottom to be pretty full. Because unlike using wired ribbon, even though this is stiff right now, it's going to lose some of its stiffness later on. So you really need to have a good support system in place. So I'm going to use one more of these. Now I'm going to bring in my other colors. Like I said, because my sign doesn't have a lot of pink in it, that's why I have more pink. So I'm going to do the same thing once again. I'm going to keep alternating which way my tails hang. Now I'm going to bring in a piece of the Harlequin. I'm going to bring in another piece of the red and black dot. There is no exact way to do this. One of the advantages to using the EzBow Maker is that you can see how your bow is developing as you go. And I'm going to bring in another piece of the Harlequin. Now I'm not shortening my loops as I go. They're all about 7 inches because this is just the bottom of my bow. So we're not shortening at this point. And with the rag bow, we're not going to shorten as we go on each stack. You'll see what I mean here in just a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit more pink in on top. Then I'm going to kind of look and see, is it full enough before I stop for my bottom? And it's not, so I'm going to keep going. Going to add another pink. And now I'm going to come back with my dots and my Harlequin. So if you don't have very good hand strength to pull this down, the twisting causes it to be really, really thick. And you don't want a really, really thick bow, so it's kind of, if you don't have hand strength, what you might want to do is take and make your loops. So that's a 7-inch loop, so you might want to just go 7 inches, 1 loop, and then go to your other side, 7 inches, 1 loop, and then set it down in there. And I'm going to do one more piece of Harlequin and then I'm done with the bottom part of my bow. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tie that I put through already. And I'm going to pull this. Don't pull too hard or you will rip the fabric. But I'm going to just pull that tight as down as possible. And I'm just using this to basically get my stack out. Just like that. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a zip tie. And I'm going to put around this stack to really pull it down. And I'm going to use my hand to just really pull it in and kind of, I'm going to grip around it to just really pull it down and kind of wad it up, basically. So it's not as thick as it was. So this is what we have so far. So that's the bottom of my bow, so I'm going to set that aside. And I'm going to go on and remember what my last color was the Harlequin. So we're going to go on with the pink again first. I'm going to lay my piece of fabric in here, my salvage edge. And now we're going to make smaller loops. So this time those loops were 7 inches. So now I'm going to go down to 6 inches. And I'm just going to keep alternating how my tail is going to hang. And I'm going to keep alternating my pattern in my fabric that I'm using 3 pink and 2 of each on the Harlequin and the dot. Now for this one I'm not going to use as much. what I'm doing is I'm holding my finger on my tail so I can make my loop the right size. So my tail doesn't, so that doesn't come sliding out while I'm making my loop. A little trick to knowing which way your tail is going to go, it's going to go opposite of how you lay this piece. So this piece is this way, so my tail is going to lay over here. So for this stack, I'm going to do one more row of the pink. So I'm going to grab my salvage edge again. Like I said, be careful, fabric will rip. So I'm just basically using this to tie this down to pull my stack out. So once again, I'm going to pull my stack out. And I'm going to grab a zip tie. And zip tie this all down together. And I'm going to set that to the side. So I ended with pink this last time, so I'm going to start with my Harlequin and my red and black dot. They're going to go down to 5 inches. So as your loops get shorter, you're going to be able to make more loops with your fabric. Now, the way that I cut my fabric is my strips ended up being 36 inches long. So I'm going down to 5 inches. So I'm going to see if I can get another loop, and I can. So because I can get another loop, I'm going to put another piece of Harlequin. So I'm going to start over here. So as you go up, you'll end up using less and less strips because you're able to make more loops. Okay, now I've got 3 loops on this side, 3 loops on this side. So I'm going to come in with my red and black. So once again, I've got 2 loops over here, 1 over here. So I'm going to put my first loop on this side. Okay, so now that I've got my harlequin and my dot, now I'm going to come in with my pink. Got 1 loop over here, 2 over here. So I want my first loop to go this way. Now as I go up and I'm getting more loops, like I said, it doesn't take as much. So I'm going to be more and more concerned about the pattern that I'm making with my fabric. So I'm going to do 1 more of the pink, but I want my loops to be even, so I'm going to make sure that there's only 2, 1 loop over here and 1 loop over here. So what I'm going to do to make sure that is I'm going to go ahead and do the twist now, because I know that that way I'll have tails on both sides. And now once again, I'm going to grab my salvage edge and tie this off. Pull it out. Grab zip tie. snug it all together. So now I'm going to lay that aside, and I'm going to do my last loops. These are going to be my last loops. So I'm going to grab another piece of my salvage edge. Landed out with the pink was my last. So I'm going to start out again with my Harlequin, and I'm going to do 4-inch loops. Now, as you can see, for the top of the bow, I'm going to end up getting 2 equal loops per color. So because this is the top and I'm getting the 2 equal, I'm going to evenly rotate because this is the top of the bow. So now I'm going to do my red and black. And the red is just a little bit too short. So that's okay. Some fabric is a little bit shorter. It just so happens that this one is a little bit shorter than the Harlequin. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay one more in. And I want my loop to go this way. And we'll just use it as tail, because I want my loops to be even. So I'm just going to lay one in. And then the rest can be tail. And that's fine. So it looks like the same thing is going to happen with the pink. And once again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to grab one more piece and have my loop come this way. And I'll set this out to the side as part of my tails. Then I'm going to come back to my Harlequin. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to finish up with one more of each color. Four loops of each. Now it's important that your center is basically just as full as your bottom, because that's a support group for your whole bow to kind of keep it, because it's fabric, there's no wire, so you really need kind of an extra support system. So this is going to help hold your other loops in place. So I'm going to pull that down as my tail again. And I'm going to do the same thing once again with the pink. Now the reason I want the pink on top is because my sign does not have much pink in it. So I want the pink to be pretty dominant in my bow so that my sign will show up. So once again, I'm going to tie all this down. So you don't have to pull too hard. If you pull too hard, you're probably going to rip your fabric. You just want to pull it down enough that it's pretty secure so you can pull your stack of fabric out. And I would recommend, depending on the size of your hands and how well you can grip, if you need to make multiple stacks per inches, like if your hand's not as big as mine to wrap around and really secure that zip tie down, you might want to make less stacks. So just kind of do it to the way that you are able to. So now we're going to start tying these together. So this is my top. Set my bow maker to the side. This is my next layer. So I'm going to cut that off. And then I'm going to stack this in here. I'm going to use my salvage edge again to secure the two of them together. And I'm being really careful that I'm not putting them side by side, but I'm putting on top of each other. So I'm going to grab my next one. I'm going to grab my salvage tie from this one, and I'm going to wrap it around this one. And what I'm going to do, this is the top of my bow, and I doubled it back. I'm going to push down on my stacks pretty good to make it so it's not so thick. And then tie it. So what I did was I was just pushing down with my hands to thin out my stack here. So we're going to bring in our last stack. So once again, I'm going to bring my salvage edge that I used to tie. I'm going to tie this to the whole bow. I'm going to go up to the top first. Come back around and down. And I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to really kind of push this down and tie it. Okay, so now that we have the base of our rag bow, I'm going to go ahead before I add my tails and I'm going to find my salvage edges and I'm going to snip those out because they're not attractive. You can snip those out as you stack, however you want to. But the salvage edge, I'm not going to add to the charm. So the last thing I'm going to do is now it's time to add the tails. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look and see what I've got left over here. So I'm going to grab 3 of these. And I'm just going to kind of stack them in my hand. And one of each of these. Do the same thing. So I'm just kind of stacking them. And I'll grab one of each of these. And 2 of the harlequin, it looks like. I had a little bit more harlequin left over than the red and dot. And I'll grab 3 of these, stack them in there, the dot, then the 2 harlequin. Just like that. I'm going to take my last piece, and this is going to be the piece that I'm going to use to hide all the ugliness, basically. So I'm going to lay my tails this way. Make sure I've got the bottom of my bow, and I'm going to place it down onto my ties, onto my tails, and then I'm going to bring this piece up and I want it a little bit more even because I wanted to pull it around again to the bottom. And then that way I've hid all the zip ties and all the nasty stuff. So now to really have the charm of the rag bow, and this is just the way I make them. You know, this is my personal choice. I'm sure there's several other different ways, but you know, some of y'all know I just kind of played around till I got it the way that I liked it. So I'm just going to start yanking all the loops apart. And just like when I fluff any other bow, I'm going to like really pull my colors apart and alternate them around. And then some of these tails, like these, that are like in the way, I'm going to go ahead and cut them down instead of pulling them. Now, if you want to, you could probably tie this to your fluff box. To really hold it down and fluff it out. So I'm going to come around to the other side, start doing the same. So I'm just really like pulling my loops apart. Just kind of like you would on any regular bow. To alternate the colors throughout. So even if you didn't want to take the time to starch the fabric, that's fine. You're just kind of going to want to really cram a little bit more fabric in there for support. These tails, I'm going to pull up this stuff up and out of the way a bit. So when you put the center in your rag bow, a lot of people put different things. You can put a brooch. You can hot glue a flower in. It just, I kind of think it depends on the tone that you're wanting to set with your wreath, what you'll put in the center of your rag bow. Now the last thing I like to do to my rag bow is I like to kind of rip the tails and thin them out a bit. So I just kind of go down and Mod Podge cut. And I especially like to do it to the shorter tails. And like a tail like this, coming out of the bow, I want to thin that down. So you just want to go a clipping and a ripping until it looks the way that you want it to. And I think this helps give your the tail of your rag bow a little bit lighter look too, and it's not so heavy. So I've ripped quite a bit, so now I'll kind of shake my rag bow out and take a look. To see if I like how the tails look. So like these over here, they're still kind of thick to me, and I want them to hang a little bit better. So I'm going to rip those. Now when I go to actually put this on my wreath, I'm really going to go to straightening my tails out so that the good side is up. These kind of look a little bit weird coming out top, so I'm just going to give those a little clip. So I'm going to shake it down one more time and give it a good look, and I love how it turned out. So just to show y'all the look that I was going for, it's to go with this heart. So I think this is going to be a fabulous wreath, and I hope y'all enjoyed this. I can't wait to see the rag bows that you make. Bye, y'all.